Thank you, beautiful. How do you say your name? Tamar Gellar.
Tamar Gellar, yeah.
Tamar Gellar. Sometimes I wonder if there's like a special accent
No,
someplace or whatever.
No,
Where are you from originally? I know that I already know this. I apologize.
that's okay. Your memory goes down the wayside like mine. I'm from Israel.
Israel.
Yes, I'm from
Interesting.
Israel. I'm a country girl from Israel.
That's where those studies came out of the whole COVID and the antibodies and the
I
6
know.
to 13 times and all that
I
stuff.
know. I know. I'm not getting into COVID talk,
So we have Oliver here, the
My
beautiful, handsome, talented, powerful, deep.
rescue golden retriever, the love of my life,
What a beautiful
the
thing.
best man in my life.
Yeah. Before we started recording, I was reading a post from Tony Robbins that you put up on your Instagram. What is your
Yes.
Instagram?
The loved dog.
The loved dog.
Yeah.
And he was, singing your praises of working with, what is his dog's name?
Halo.
Halo.
Yes,
And-
because I do use a lot of what Tony's methodology,
Yeah.
because dogs are so much more like us than not. So I'm very blessed that Tony trusted me with his dog,
Yeah.
sent it to me from Florida
Mm.
to California, and it was amazing to see her transform.
And one of the things that stood out, which is one of the reasons that I really appreciate connecting with you, is the congruencies of working with a dog to being in relationship with a human being.
That's exactly.
And it's not like, and then before we were also talking about like the, kind of the tendency of infantilizing kids, and we talked, it's okay, we have like special rules, we talk to them in this special way, and I think there's value in having mutual respect for other beings.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I really truly believe the dogs in our lives are angels and teachers, and they come to our life to teach us how to be in a relationship. And they are, in fact, in my opinion, they are our training wheels. To learn how to show up to a relationship, to learn how to understand somebody who is different than you, how to see not only what you need from them, but what do you need to be to show up to a relationship. Like you and I talked earlier about what makes somebody viable to show up to a relationship. What do you need to be to attract the person that you want to be with?
Yeah.
And I think dogs will tell you the honest truth, because I want you to imagine your cell phone is ringing right now. Let's say you're holding your cell phone right now, Aaron, and it's ringing. What is the very first thing we all do when our cell phone is ringing?
Reach for it.
After we reach for it, what do we do?
Hope it's some beautiful female. Right?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't hope it's a
I
beautiful
thought that
female.
was consistent.
Certainly not. No.
I don't know. What do we do?
So what do we do after you hold the phone in your hand? What is the first thing you do before you answer it? What do you do?
I mean, I press the button to
Before
answer.
that, what do you do?
I don't know.
The cell phone is in your hand.
Yeah.
Imagine the cell phone is in your hand. What do you do?
I
You
look at it. I
Thank
check.
you. You look at it. See, most people
I'm
have
learning.
hard time
I'm
admitting
Yeah.
that we all look to see who is calling.
Yeah.
Why? Because we all check to see if we will answer that call or not, right? We all do it, but everybody's embarrassed about admitting it.
Oh, that's true.
So what's happening is when we are looking to see who is calling, to see if we want to answer it, our brain, unbeknownst to us, quickly, very much, very, very quickly process, if I'll answer that call right now, would that be pain or would that be pleasure? Because our body wants us to prevent pain, not to experience pain. They want us to go for pleasure. So when I'm talking about a dog in a relationship, if you're out hiking with your dog at a dog park or on the beach and you call your dog, and your dog stops, turns around, looks at you, and say, should I take their call or not? They say your name on their cell phone, so to speak.
Right.
You just call them, you just dial their number. And they go, should I take the call or not? And what happens if your dog push the button, it goes ignore and goes back to sniffing a bush or playing with another dog?
Right.
What happened is most people then blame the dog. Blah, 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 he's not obedient, it's not that. What I'm saying is like, let's stop. Let's see what happened in the past when your dog realized, I don't want to go back right now.
Hmm.
How did you show up unbeknownst to you in the relationship? Do you see? So when I'm talking about dogs are our training wheels, not everybody going to be that honest with us.
Hmm.
But dogs are. And instead of blaming, it's kind of like, let's see, what's going on with the dog at that moment, what's going on with me. Really kind of to co-create a relationship.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I'm in charge, you're subservient, because it doesn't work in any relationship, not even with a dog.
That's such a beautiful lens to look at relationships from a place of pain or pleasure. I think that many people operate from a place of maybe pain or maybe inflicting pain or violence, and not realizing it. There's various different forms of violence.
Yeah.
And that's their approach to life. Maybe they learn like, oh, you got to be a strong man, or you got to,
yes,
to get what you need, you got to just crush and conquer.
Yes.
But ultimately within that, if that's your approach, it might work for a while, but the people or the dogs or, whatever that you're crushing and conquering, literally or metaphorically, they will have an uprising.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, you can't just operate that way because they're not going to have they're not going to truly respect you. They're not going to well, maybe they wouldn't be truly loyal to you, perhaps.
And that's the difference between...
If respect from fear is different from respect from, general appreciation, trust.
Devotion.
Yeah.
When somebody is devoted to you, think about a musical band. Think about Jerry Garcia. What was his fans were willing to do? What were his fans willing to do?
Yeah.
Anything, just to see Jerry Garcia. Versus when you're not a raving fan, when it's not something that you're like, oh, it's okay. If he's there, if he's not, that singer. So really in a relationship, if you come from a place of I'm in charge and you have to, versus the one you're in a relationship with you is excited to see your name show up on their cell phone. Or your dog is excited when they hear you utter the name. And they're like, yes, I've been called. That is the best way to be in a relationship. That's what we all want, right?
Yeah.
When that our beloved, when they see us, they're like, yes.
What are examples that you see in both dogs and humans? Examples of imposing pain or violence or kind of the opposite of pleasure into a relationship? What does that actually look like?
So with dogs, I mean, if we're going to kind of like go back to where it started, dog training where people took pets, not military dogs, and start training them started in the 1950s. And in the 1950s, they followed the way you modify behavior of the military. Unfortunately, in dog training, despite all the advances that we have with understanding the brain, understanding the nervous system, understanding trauma, understanding attachment theories, none of it is being reflected in dog training. So in dog training, still people believe the myth that the dog wants to be dominant. So when you get a dog, you have to be alpha and to make sure that your dog would not be in charge, would not dominate over you. And that is a terrible, terrible, terrible myth. It's not true at all. Absolutely not true. If a man goes or a woman goes into a relationship with the other partner, feeling that they are there to take away from them, take away their sovereignty, take away their options, take away, where is that relationship going to go? Yeah. So the invitation that I see with dogs and what I like to facilitate is to get rid of the myths. The myths of, one, the dog wants to dominate you, and second myth is that the dog should give you unconditional love. There's no such thing. It's co-creation. No dog wants to dominate you. And if you go into a relationship from a place of violence, like, I'm going to dominate you, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. There are going to be many different coping mechanisms, but ultimately it's not going to work.
I feel like upon getting a dog, perhaps there could be some type of like pre-dog ownership training program.
Mm-hmm.
Work with your own shit to not impose that upon this beautiful angelic animal that you're bringing into your life. Kind of like having a child.
Even absolutely, with the child is even more important, because if you have not done your work to go and see where are your issues, then certainly, beside epigenetic that pass along through the DNA, you will trickle it down to your children. So I think it's a great opportunity to practice those things and to see where you have room to grow, where you have room to do better, practicing on your dog. And one of the best things I like to do is to start teaching people how not to do obedience. On regular basis, Aaron, every day I get calls from people. My dog done all the obedience things, but my dog is still reactive. My dog is still ignoring. My dog is still hyper. I don't know how to connect with my dog, because what they teach you that a dog needs in order to live in a happy life in a human society is simply not true. I equated that when I went to school, they taught me 4 years of trigonometry, 4 years of algebra, 4 years of physics. How many of these do I use right now?
Yeah.
0. Why didn't they teach me breath work? Why didn't they teach me conflict resolution? Why didn't they teach me how to, balance my budget?
Yeah.
Why didn't they teach me entrepreneurship, marketing? These are skills that we all need right now. And I see the same thing with dogs, where it's still stuck in the 1950s as opposed to teaching the dog life skills. And I find that when we teach something, we often learn it. And one of the things that I love to teach people is how to understand their dog. So, like, for example, body language. And if we completely throw away the notion that the dog tried to be dominant, that is not the goal that they have with us. With each other, they may have a little bit more, but it's so much more complex, so much more beautiful what's going on. I'll give you an example. A couple of days ago, I had a Labradoodle come to my training play group. So I have a bunch of dogs.
Love Labradoodles.
They're amazing.
They're so sweet.
They're sweet.
Yeah.
By the way, side note, not all Labradoodles are the same. Not even the Labradoodles from the same litter. Meaning, you have a sibling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you and him the same personality?
Yeah, right. No.
Right? But you come from the same parents, right?
Sure.
So it's kind of like, let's stop the notion that if I'm getting a Labradoodle, that's what a Labradoodle should be. Yeah, they're going to have certain characteristics, but
you're like dog racist.
But that's exactly. Not all Israelis are the same. Not everybody who lives in Austin are the same, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody who is on Muscle Beach is the same, right? I mean, it's just like your own siblings. Are you the same as your siblings? If you're not, then let the dog be an individual. So the first thing,
letting go of your expectations, because your expectations will paint your narrative. We're imposing our narratives upon each other, and that's altering the individual in front of us.
It's making them not good enough. It's a recipe for disaster to come in with knowing what the person or what the dog is like. I mean, come on, we all love it when somebody tells us what we think and what we feel, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what you think, Aaron. You're really going to love when I'm telling you that, right? It's horrible. Nobody likes that. As opposed to come, open, and to say, I'm curious. Let's see. What are you good at? What are you comfortable at? What is challenging? What would you like help with? And to come from that place to a relationship, whether with a person or with a dog, it is so much better in my mind. So that cute little Labradoodle, 20 pounds, came to my home, and I always integrate the dog. So I introduce the new dog to the dogs that I already have there, one at a time. So it's not overwhelming. So the dog is not flooded. And what became very clear that at the beginning she was running around, running, and it looked like she was playing, like she was trying to get the other dogs to chase her. But then as I start to see it with the second and third dog, I said, she's not running because she's trying to get the other dog to chase her. She's running out of nervousness. And I saw how many times you see people who giggle. Sure. Not because they're actually having a good time and they're giggling because it's fun. They're giggling as a nervous response.
Yeah.
And it can be very confusing.
It's a socially acceptable
That's exactly.
nervous response.
That's exactly. And their dog did a socially acceptable nervous response of, you can't connect with me. Not long ago I was dating a guy, and he was always busy. He was always busy. And I started to realize that pattern, that is the same way as that dog running. You couldn't catch them. You couldn't sit. You couldn't connect. Like, we're sitting right now. I'm looking in your eyes. That was not a possibility. Not with the guy that I was dating, and not with the dog.
Yeah.
It was just socially accepted behavior to not to connect, not to stop and just really feel whatever they were feeling. And had we not saw that dog, that's what she was doing, we would let all the dog chase her because, oh my God, she's having fun. And she wasn't. She was stressed. So instead, I stopped introducing her to the dogs that way. Instead, I picked her up and I held her like a baby, her heart to my heart. And we walked around. We walked around and I was humming. I was comforting her the way you would do to a toddler. And when she got a little bit calmer, and I can tell it by the breathing, I let one dog at a time come and sniff her. Because they were chasing her because they wanted to sniff her LinkedIn profile, which is in the anal gland. But she would not let them. So there was a frustration that built up. Her behavior of don't come close to me by running frustrated the other dog, and that would have been a more traumatic experience for her. She came from a place of not feeling safe, and that would have made it worse. So it's very important when I talk to people is to really read what truly is going on with the dog's body language. Just like with people's body language. I mean, you're an expert at really reading people's bodies, and they tell you a story sometimes different than what the person is saying with words, right?
That's so cool. It reminds me of like before this, we were also talking about avoidant attachment styles and anxious attachment styles, and it sounds to me like that dog, in that context, ran into a secure attachment style. You as the coach or trainer or human or
That's exactly.
friend or whatever your title would be in that dog's life, and so by perpetuating that avoidant, anxious, whatever, it's
Exactly.
like that running, not because I want to be dating that person or I want to be in that relationship or that friend group or that business, whatever the thing is, it's because I'm in fact kind of like running around past wounding or whatever it may be, re-perpetuating these things until eventually I run into a place that feels finally secure where I can like
And by the
Which is
way,
very cool.
I believe that is the longing that people have in the heart, to have that, to find that place in a relationship, and that's why people get dogs. People get dogs, in my belief, not because they are looking to be in charge and dominant and all of that, alpha. People get dogs because they want a place, they're longing, they're yearning for that place where they can feel that they can give love safely. And nobody going to tell them you're overbearing, you're too much.
Yeah, it's very unconditional dogs.
And it's not true. They are conditional, but they're accepting love. Dogs have much more willingness to accept love without feeling they're being controlled, and also to give love.
You've probably heard that before, people saying dogs are unconditional love.
And that's the second myth. So the
Yeah.
biggest myth is the dogs try to be dominant. It's not true.
Let me keep on speaking mistruths about dogs and then you stop thinking about.
But you see, but that is the time that we all, like all men are violent or all men are that.
Right.
No, that's not true.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's
I
true.
mean, it's kind of like dogs do not give unconditional love. And by the way, nobody should be expected to give unconditional love. I don't think it's fair, because if you're not showing up to the dog, meeting the dog needs at the highest level, then your dog needs are going unmet.
Yeah.
And the dog has no options but to try to find other ways to meet those needs. So, for example, if you are not giving your dog enough exercise in a way that meet the dog needs, like in a play way, to just exercise you on your own is completely different when you are exercising playing with somebody. It meets completely different needs. If you're not giving that need to your dog at the highest level, and you're taking your dog to the dog park and you meet other dogs, don't expect your dog to come to you when he finally has the opportunity to get that particular need met.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? If somebody is starving and somebody, is offering them the most beautiful, delicious meal and they're sitting to eat, don't call them before they take the first bite or after the first bite. chances are they will stay there to meet that need, to satiate that hunger.
Yeah.
You see, so it's kind of like, it's very important when I'm working with people to debunk the whole notion of 1950s dog training that what a dog needs is obedience. That is not. What a dog needs is life skills from a person who sees them, who can read them, and knows what to give them in the way that will satiate the 6 core needs at the highest level.
What do you think of submitting a dog?
What do you think about submitting a woman or submitting a man?
It's very common.
It's horrible.
They
It's
need to know
horrible.
who's boss, Tamar.
That is Neanderthal way of thinking. It's Neanderthal way of thinking in any relationship.
Yeah.
Any relationship. And unfortunately, a lot of what people education come from, social media and TV shows, and nobody really checks to see, is it viable information?
Submitting a dog, by the way, is... Can you describe what that?
Yes,
that might not be what people in the dog training world call it. But
So literally 2 days ago, Peter sent me a video that he said, Tamar, would you please give us your opinion? And in that video, do you see a man who calls himself a dog trainer and a dog, and he has the choke chain on the dog's neck, and he is screaming at the dog, sit, sit, sit. The dog is laying on the ground, completely crawl like into himself, crying. And the person is like, sit. The person was saying that the dog is being dominant by refusing. Meanwhile, you see the dog is in utter trauma, peed himself, utter trauma. But that guy is like, the dog is not saying what I'm doing. The dog is challenging me. And hence I'm saying that person is Neanderthal. This is abuse, utter abuse. And unfortunately, Aaron, it makes me so emotional. I have so many dogs come to me that were abused under the guise of, you have to be submissive to us. Because what's the biggest issue that I see right now that caused the utmost suffering to dogs and to children, by the way, and in grown-ups too. But let's talk about dogs for that case, is misdiagnosed trauma. I see so many dogs who are, when they're acting aggressive, they're being labeled as dominant. When actually, when the nervous system gets activated, the nervous system has the option to freeze, to flight, or to fight. If a dog is on a leash, and his nervous system is being activated and he feels completely threatened, he cannot freeze because the owner keep walking the dog. He cannot run away, cannot flight. He's on a leash. So what can the nervous system do without guidance of a secure attachment parent to help him? Is to fight. Freeze doesn't work, flight doesn't work, so the dog has to fight. Unfortunately, a lot of trauma is being misunderstood. So when we think about trauma, trauma is physiological. Trauma is not out there. Trauma is being recorded even before the brain is being cognitive of trauma, and it's being recorded in the body. We know that. You're with me, right? You know that this is,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, nobody even think about it when it comes to dogs. So the veterinarians are not seeing it. They don't study it in school. Dog trainers certainly not see it. And I get a lot of dogs with different degrees of traumas come to me. And trauma, it can be an event that causes a change in the nervous system, long-term impact, in a disruption in the nervous system in the body. But it can also be from neglect. And it can also be, and Stanford University research showed when trauma starts, that it often starts in utero. If the mother was stressed and the mother's body was secreting a lot of cortisol, the pups are in that amnio fluid, swimming in that cortisol soup, just like a child may live for 9 months. Dogs are 62 days in that cortisol amnio fluid marination. The puppy is born, already the nervous system is already hyped to be hypervigilant, to be avoidance, one of the two on the spectrum. And when they come to me, I see dogs who are rescue dogs, and I see dogs that came from fancy breeders where people pay thousands of dollars, and I see the same situation. So the first thing that I have to do is to heal the nervous system. My job is to get the nervous system placed to a regulation. If I don't do that, there's no cognitive ability that can happen to the dog. It's impossible. You know the body. You know when we get triggered, when the nervous system goes on arouse and go into fight or flight, what happens is the blood leaves the nervous system and goes to the big muscle groups. So there's no way to learn. So the example that I give to people is, imagine you are flying in an airplane, and all of a sudden the airplane take a nosedive, the yellow masks come down, everybody's freaking out, and I'm like, okay, now let's teach you Chinese. You always wanted to learn Mandarin. Let me teach you now. That person going to say, Tamar, go away from me.
Yep.
Are you crazy? Or are you going to come to that person, oh, here is your meal right now. Let me give you your favorite meal. The plane is taking a nosedive. You cannot eat. Your body is shut down. You cannot think. You can reproduce also, by the way. That's what happens in the body. So when a dog is in that place and trainers say, well, he's ignoring you because he's dominant, that is biologically wrong. It's biologically wrong. The dog cannot process information there. And the key or the clue for the parent, the dog parent to see is if your dog is not taking treats at that moment, that is the biggest clue that the system is shut down. Nobody is home. You can't correct the dog. You can't teach him. You have to say, how can I get the dog away from their triggering situation and start to work on desensitizing them to whatever the trigger is in a safe. The key with any relationship, with any human being or with a dog is to create a container that is safety. And unfortunately, that is not even a possibility when it comes to dog training. Because dog training is not about making the puppy or the dog feel safe while we're teaching them. The whole thing is, I'm in charge, you're supposed to do what I say. And I really would like to completely create a paradigm shift and to make it not okay anymore. Just like it's not okay for domestic violence, it's not okay to abuse children. I want to stop the traditional dog training, which is abusive.
Wow.
Abusive for dogs.
That's so beautiful. It feels like that's so consistent with humans like that. Like, it's interesting, love, like all you need is love, and love cures it. Like, love's like this superpower thing, but it's also kind of this like fluffy kind of new age concept, but also is completely legit. Like if you can come from a place of love.
Yes. So one of the
things.
It does change this thing. And I really love,
But then you have to have defined love.
That's exactly.
And people have different interpretations of what love is. And, tough love and maybe too much compassion is, it's too much, sometimes, so that's like, I think that's the thing is coming back to a healthy set point of what does it mean to love? And do you even know how to love? And is your love the same as my love, the same as someone else's love? Is someone's love better or worse? Is there some ultimate truth in love?
And also the way you love one person is not the same the way you love another person. There are different aspects of you. So what I ask my clients, I ask them to follow the 4 agreements. Dan Miguel Ruiz. Yeah. And I ask them when it comes to the relationship with the dog to follow the 4 agreements, which one of them is be impeccable with your words. You can't tell a dog sit down. Is it a sit or is it a down? Which one? It's not impeccable. You can't tell your dog good dog when they're doing something right, because what the heck did they just do? Because if I, who speak your language, don't know what good dog was for, how can your dog know? So you got to be impeccable. Be specific. Be specific how you're talking, what you're saying. Be impeccable with your word. The other thing is, don't make assumptions. Assumption is the killer of any relationship.
You're a dog racist.
You're completely thinking my dog trying to dominate me.
Yeah.
Oh, my dog is stupid. Oh, my dog is stubborn. These are the things. Somebody told me.
All pit bulls are dangerous.
Yes,
Everyone.
assumptions. It's exactly.
Yeah.
And all Labradoodles are sweet.
That's right.
All golden retrievers are sweet. No, it's not. I recently had to expel a golden retriever. He wasn't. You know, so it's kind of like don't make assumptions. I mean, assumptions are absolutely, absolutely wrong. I mean, ask questions. So don't make assumptions when it comes to your dogs. Try to see, and really, you really got to learn more about how do we hide traumas. You know, because people hide traumas, dogs hide traumas. To show with your weakness as an animal is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, which oftentimes translates or it turns into high performers.
In people.
In people.
Of course.
I wonder with dogs. Is there high performing dogs? Probably so, huh?
No, they're not trying to high perform. It's truly they are way more in tune with themselves.
Huh.
They're definitely not judging themselves as compared to the others as much as we do. Dogs are really, that is so beautiful about them. They're really about meeting their needs at the highest level, not so much in comparison to the other. Yeah. But anyhow, back to the 4 agreements. So we don't want to make assumptions about our dogs and instead to ask questions. Particularly if you think that your dog is dominant, chances are you're wrong. It's so far and few between that you meet a dominant dog. Rarely. The other thing is don't take things personally. The 3rd agreement that Don Miguel Ruiz talks about is don't take things personally. Your dog is not doing something. Be curious. Again, see what is it within them. Why don't they do it? Why are they not doing it? Why they are doing what they're doing? Don't take things personally. Your dog is jumping on guests. Don't feel embarrassed. This is not about you. Don't take it personally. And the 4th one, which is in my mind, is beyond is do your best. Are you doing your best? Are you showing up 100% to the relationship with your dog? Or you're just coming from a place, well, the dog should.
Yep.
If you're not showing up like that as a dog parent, then you're a dog owner. I differentiate between your dog owner, the dog is a property, versus I'm a dog parent. Because as a parent, you in a place where you want to give first, and then you receive. You're not going to accept your baby or your toddler to give you before you give them, right?
Yeah.
So that is the way I kind of like look at what do I invite.
Yeah.
Because people who come to me and they are dog owners, obviously we're not a good fit. I'm not for them, they're not for me.
Yeah.
It's only those who are like, do the work. And they really want to show up for the dog. And they know that in return, they're going to get, it's the best return on investment in my mind, ROI.
When you, something we were talking about before this as well was voice prosody and tonality and the way that we communicate. And we were talking about the polyvagal theory and Stephen Porges, which you've talked about on here. When you're communicating with a dog, I would imagine tone matters deeply, just the way it does with human beings. There's a study from the 60s from Albert Morabian. I don't know if you're familiar with him before. He's UCLA.
No, what did he say?
Professor of psychology. He came up with a principle called I think it was the 65-38-7 principle is what it was. So 65% of our communication comes from body language, and then 38 comes from the tonality, the way we're communicating, and then there's like this last little sliver of the pie.
Which is words.
Which is the actual words that we're saying. And that's specifically comes down to if there's incongruency. So if you're just talking on the phone, then obviously, words will be of greater value than body language, but you still are talking with body language and tone on the phone.
Tone of voice,
obviously tone, but even body language. Like you can hear when somebody smiles. You can hear, when somebody's walking, if someone's hunched over talking, if they feel depressed. Like you can feel the texture of someone's communication, even if it is over phone. But what that relates to is if there's incongruencies between, so if we're here and I'm like, oh my God, I'm having such a great time here. I just love being here, but my hips are facing the door and my feet are facing, like how do I get out of here essentially? I'm not making eye contact. Maybe my voice was totally normal a second ago. Now all of a sudden it's getting high pitch. So I said the words, but you just, with 93% accuracy, I would say even more than that, if you have any level of just, attention to what's going on in the world, it would be higher. You're going to trust what they're saying with their body and their tone. But what I wanted to get with that is, can you hear the same is it the same with dogs in the way that they communicate and the tone of their barks or the sounds that they make?
So the answer is unequivocally yes. I can hear a dog's bark, and I can tell when they're barking just to fake it, when they're barking just they're being cute, they're barking because they're like, you pissed me off, dude. Back off.
Yeah.
You're different. But to go back to what you're saying is, we are the people who use, dogs do not use the 11% as much. With them, it's much, much less. With them, it's face expression, body language, tone, really, the growl, the whatever.
Yeah, right.
So, but with us, it's very, very important. And one of the things that I find that is extremely difficult for people to do is to express sweetness and singing in particular when they talk to the dog. I feel that people are feeling embarrassed to show the sweet side, the vulnerable side. They are so much more comfortable to say, sit. And I don't allow that because in my method, sit is a correction. So I ask them to tell the dog, sit, sit, like with a big smile. Sit, sit. Where the dog knows it's not, good boy, sit. What do you feel if you're a foreigner and you just came into China? You don't speak Chinese.
Yeah.
And they would tell you, good boy, sit. Like, what did I just do? You don't know what good boy means. You don't know what sit means.
Yeah.
But if somebody was telling you, sit, sit, as you're sitting and touching you or petting you on the chest, sit, sit, sit. You may not know what it means, but you're open to learn. There's something about that. You're now open to learn. So one of the things that I work with people is how to be comfortable, to be vulnerable, and to express. And I work with them a lot on fake smiling because, as you know, even if it's fake smile, the body changes.
And there's different types of smiling. There's smiling with your eyes versus smiling without your eyes. So smizing term.
Smizing, I love that.
I think it's your orbicularis oculi muscles that kind of cause the eyes to squint.
Yes.
That's an indication of a genuine, authentic smile.
So I start with them with a fake smile. Just like you can start with laughter meditation with a fake laughter.
Yeah.
You're faking it.
Sure.
You're not really laughing. But what happens? You crack yourself up and you start laughing for real.
Yeah.
So this is the same. I'm taking, you see, what I'm doing in my method of the dog coaching that I'm doing is truly coaching both dogs and people using all the incredible information that is now available to us.
Yeah.
And because why do they get a dog? Because they are longing for that beautiful relationship. What will happen if I'll teach them how to smile more easily? If I'll teach them how to sing praise to the beloved, may it be a dog, may it be a person. You see, so this is what I was telling you at the beginning. These are training wheels, our relationship with dogs.
Yeah.
Because we take all of that, and that's why I love being on your podcast. It's such an honor being here because I love the work that you're doing, how you are introducing people to their own bodies. People are completely divorced from their bodies. They have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, you are introducing them, hi, you, here is your body. I'm introducing them, hi, you, here is your heart through your dog.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as you're saying this. It's like we're continually attuning to each other. So your facial gestures or postural patterns or voice tonality or any of that, like your presence in the room. There might be some energetic stuff. Maybe there's electromagnetic frequency fields coming off your heart and your brain that were invisible stuff that's going on. But there's very clearly overt, visible happenings that we're perceiving, digesting, interpreting, and it makes us feel a way. And it's interesting, by having a dog or a relationship or anything in your life where it does cause you to vocalize certain expressions. So by you saying sit or you saying sit, both of those, one's not right or wrong. I think that there's no like moralistic judgment. They're just different outcomes. And so it's an interesting thing by bringing an animal or a relationship or whatever it is that just causes you to vocalize or to move or to be moved. It's literally, it's like you're choosing a channel for your nervous system to occupy. And so when you're communicating with that animal, it's literally you're changing the way that you produce yourself and the way that, the hormones and your endocrinology and, your mental emotional state based off of the way that you guide the ship and choose to communicate. It's like this feedback loop. And so, but you just making that sound, whatever it is, you could just go, oh, or you could sing, or you could, whatever it is, you're literally, it's creating real-time structural change in the way that you produce yourself. And so by having, a dog in your life or a relationship, whatever it may be, it's such a beautiful thing that by making the choice to infuse love into that relationship, I think it becomes mentally, emotionally, and physiologically healing to yourself.
100%. 100%. There's only one thing that I would like to bring up with you is that if you're in a relationship with a person, that other person is a sovereign being. He can walk away from the relationship. If you're not nice in your tone of voice to that person can leave.
Unless it reminds them of their father.
But they still have the
like
freedom. They still have the freedom to leave.
Unless they're imprisoned by their own.
But of course, they still can get in a car and drive away, and it will be okay. For a dog who lives in a family that they talk to him or that person talks to him not nice, the dog is stuck.
Yeah.
So I think it's more important then that the person would realize that the dog is a dependent. It's like a child. A child cannot walk away from a parent.
Yeah.
They're dependent. A dog is more like a child. And therefore, if you as a grown man, if somebody as a grown man talking not nice to a grown-up woman, it's bad. But it's not as terrible as a grown man talk badly to a 2-year-old child. Right?
Yeah.
That is, because the child is trapped.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel about dogs. And that's why I feel it's so much more important that people would realize how powerful they are, how impactful they are, for better and for worse, with the tone of voice.
I wonder how much, it brings up an interesting point of like how much sovereignty we really have over the decisions that we make and the people that we attract. Because I don't know that like someone that lives in a trap house and they're like shooting up meth or whatever, whatever the situation is. I don't know that they're consciously choosing that.
No, Mate Gabor. Yeah.
Yeah, we've done, I think we've done 2 podcasts.
So
together.
What he's saying, that he wants to decriminalize the system because they said they're not doing it because they're choosing.
Yeah.
They are trauma victims. And that's the way that they alleviate pain.
Yeah.
But they're not choosing it. It's not really a choice.
But that's the far end of the spectrum of seeming like some type of psychological slavery. I wonder, so it seems like, oh yeah, like for sure, it's overt. But I wonder if you draw the pendulum back, like how much sovereignty we have over our decisions as you come back into places that seems more neutral.
I love that question because I've been struggling with that a lot because I look at people and I look at relationship and I'm in the dating world and I recently just realized, I'm ashamed to say that I'm always dating the same guy. The avoidance, attachment, the avoidance attachment, the one who starts good and then, disappear. And I'm like, wait a minute. How come I only now realize that I was not realizing that I was being led by a mechanism that was guiding me? And boy, if I've done every seminar under the sun and read every book and I'm dealing with behavior and I teach behavior and I didn't realize it about myself, So, and now that I'm realizing it, how can I catch the red flags before? So to your question, talking from my experience, I don't think we have that much freedom of choice until we really do a lot of work. Face ourselves, love ourselves, forgive ourselves, and try to do better differently. And I think working with the dogs is just helping.
Do you think that that comes from some root of like unlovability? Is like perhaps a common thing of finding someone that's going to leave us, and so we're like confirming that.
Of course, I do think so. I do think so. That in the core, Tony Robbins says, again, I'm studying with Tony. I love Tony. He's my client, but he's just so many times I find myself quoting him because he just is so concise. And he says, in the core, every human being, doesn't matter how good looking they are, how much money they have or whatever, in the core, feel that somewhere in me, I'm not good enough, and therefore, I'm not lovable. So there are degrees. There are degrees of that. Even narcissistic people have degrees of that.
What do you think the value of that is in culture or in human?
I mean, this is one of the best way to manage people, no? To make them feel that as you are flawed. So constantly try to do better, go in and feel guilty and push yourself harder. Because if everybody felt, think what happened in the 60s. I just watched a documentary about psychedelics.
Which one?
Can't remember.
Oh, that's okay.
It was either Netflix
I'm always
or
looking
Apple.
for good documentaries. I feel like there's not enough good documentaries.
No, there aren't.
I get through my Netflix thing. I'm like, I've seen everything I want to see.
But it was about psychedelics, where how they criminalized psychedelics. Because what was going on, it was during Vietnam, and everybody was doing like, I'm cool, I'm good, I'm love.
Yeah.
I want love. And that is not what's good for society, particularly not in the 60s.
Yep.
We need you to feel anger. We need you to feel fear. We need you to feel stress.
Also figuring out a way to criminalize very specific groups so they don't have the power to vote and be impactful in culture. So if they're doing,
I don't know about that. Tell me more.
That was. I'm kind of blurry on the details of it, but I think that was a big part of like the Nixon administration and the war on drugs was to get, black people and people that would essentially like vote against his.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, what they were their prerogative.
Yes.
And so, okay, like what are these people doing? Well, they're doing these substances, and so now all of a sudden, if we create a narrative, like Reefer Madness is a great example of that, which ultimately that all came for financial gain as well. But that was different. That was like the textile industry, or not textile industry. So that was cotton. Have you heard that?
No.
The story?
No.
Yeah, it was like William Randolph Hearst and a group of people. Hemp was infringing on the production of paper, which would be coming from trees, and they found that hemp was just way more economic, and it just made much more sense. But then I believe it was William Randolph Hearst. He had like thousands of acres. Yeah, exactly. And so it was so they had to figure out some narrative to spin to make marijuana be this really evil substance. And so marijuana wasn't even what it was called. It was just called cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And cannabis was this thing that was, it's like what brought people from Europe over to the United States in the first place.
Really?
So that was what the sails were made of. And when people first got here, settlers got here, they actually, it's ironic because they were actually fined for not growing hemp because they needed hemp to survive.
What? I had
and so
no
everything,
idea.
the first car, the Model T ran on hemp oil. Like this country, as we know it, Western culture in a big way is maybe not founded on hemp, but it's, a pretty pivotal piece in the whole puzzle.
Wow.
And so it's just that, the narrative, which ultimately came from fear of, scarcity or, losing.
Yes.
And then the people in power, they can spin the narrative and control media. And, then it's like, okay, it's a new narrative.
Yes.
But that happened as well from my understanding, that kind of got repeated in the Nixon administration. And it was to criminalize people that were going against their prerogative.
Yeah. So back to your question is I feel that...
Oh, yeah, sorry, that was long.
If people... No, but I think it was really a good point to show how things can be manipulated, that if people feel love, they're less likely to want to fight.
Yeah.
So, I love what Andrew Huberman talks about when you have too much serotonin. When you have higher serotonin in the brain, it makes you blissed out.
Yeah.
You are less likely to want to do things. You are less hungry. You are less likely to do things. So people who have higher level of serotonin, meaning they're in bliss, they're in love, this is not very productive for society.
Right.
You know, so it's kind of like back to your question. We probably need to find the balance when it comes to people.
And then I wonder what's, again, there's no right or wrong or, good or bad. It's just first like defining where are we going? Where would you like to arrive?
Yeah, what's the end game?
Yeah, like first define the arrival point, and then from there we can start to have definitive lines of like, oh no, like that's wrong because it takes us off your perceived course. But ultimately, like the right or wrong moralistic judgment stuff, it's like, well, first you have to define like where are you trying to go in the first place.
And it's never going to happen in society. It can happen with your dog, but it will never happen in society because everybody have come from different backgrounds.
But maybe society, like where is society going? Like whose consciousness is running the show? I guess is an interesting question.
At the moment.
Yeah.
Because that moment changes.
Right. And so we were talking about, like hive mind mentality before this as well. And so you could look maybe at a beehive or an ant colony, and you could be like, oh man, like those bees, like they don't have their own sovereignty and autonomy, and like they should have their own penthouse suite someplace and have like a hot tub and be like living it up, be totally separate from the hive. They're just a part of this grander, a hive to create honey or whatever. But like, it's not for them. It's for this other thing. Like perhaps there's some value in integrating that hive mind mentality into humans, into schools and education, and to make you be kind of a gear of something grander. That's doesn't seem ideal for me, but I'm just kind of going
on
devil's
a tangent.
advocate.
Yes,
yeah.
But in Israel, they did the Kibbutz. The Kibbutz is a socialistic endeavor.
Right.
They don't believe in God. This is a non-religious entities, and they have thousands of them in Israel. And basically, it's communal. Doesn't matter what you contribute, you get equally. And everybody takes care of each other. And ultimately, it started where the parent does not raise their own children.
Right.
That they have an end game of what they want the children to be like, and they choose the best people to raise the children. And the parents had only visiting rights. That's how it started.
Wow.
You know where it's at now?
Uh-uh.
Pretty much gone. It didn't survive that human experience. And the reason why, because the people who were brilliant and they wanted to get into high tech and whatnot, it was not fair that they will get compensated or get opportunities to buy the expensive computer because, Joe Schmo, who just was growing tomatoes in the yard, was not okay that guy going to get the expensive computer. So that person had to leave if he was into high tech and into development and into everything. They found out that it's the best when you are a child or when you're an older person. That is the best. When you are in the creative, when you want to define who you are and explore yourself, it simply didn't work. And there were thousands of them, and they still exist, but they exist in a different way, with a lot more financial freedom and choices for the members. Yeah?
Thank you for allowing me to go into that tangent.
Clearly.
Yeah. We need to wrap up in the next soonish, but I know that there's so many interesting things that you've been stewing on, and I'd be curious if there's anything that in particular what would be interesting to share before we wrap up.
I think we touched on the most important things, which are really about let's honor our longing to be loved and to love safely. And that's why we get a dog. And when we get a dog, let's not try to dominate a dog. Instead, let's try to understand them. Let's work with them. Let's find out what their needs are. How can we meet the needs at the highest level? And let's love. Let's have the courage to love. One thing that I just wanted to say about sound, when you recently had COVID, you made the weirdest sound. Remember the sound that you were making?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, God, most people would not have the courage to release stuff, break stuff in their lungs.
Sure.
Right? The way you did it.
Well, at least video it and show thousands of people it.
Yes.
It's a little awkward.
But you feel it's awkward because I think people are feeling awkward to share sounds. And I really think it's a great place to express with your dog, to start singing and loving and calming down the dog nervous system. If your dog is reactive, I want to invite you to consider that you're not to correct your dog, but instead to look for modalities to heal your dogs.
What else is on here? What were the bullet
Oh my
points?
God. It's just, we covered a lot.
Really?
Yeah, we covered a lot.
I want to know.
You
I don't want to.
know,
I feel like there. I feel like
I mean,
there's.
but I talk about, so I came with notes.
Yeah.
I always come prepared.
I want to know. It's in the notes.
I'm an ex-intelligence officer, as you know, with the Elite Special Forces. I never go anywhere not prepared. I mean, this is like,
Did we talk about that in the last conversation?
maybe, I have no idea.
How did you transition from that into training dogs?
When I finished doing my work as an my focus as an intelligence officer was about understanding behavior.
Yeah.
So I would find, because I'm hypervigilant from my traumatic childhood, that gave me a skill set that allowed me to catch behaviors that are out of place. And I was doing it for 4 years, and then I went down to the desert. Before I was going to go to university to learn to be a psychologist, I went down to the desert to help with the behavior research on birds and on wolves. And when I was in the desert, just like chilling away from people, just being there, with the animals and by myself, I had a dream. And the dream, I heard a voice, and it said, you need to work with dogs. And I had nothing to do with dogs. I like dogs. I was not a dog lover. I was a dog liker. And it's kind of like that incredible, magical thing that happened that opened doors for me where there were no doors. I would see a wall and boom, a door all of a sudden would show up and open. So I did not do anything. I just showed up to things, and when they happened, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes not, I followed through. Like when Simon & Schuster asked me to write a book, and for a year I said, I don't have anything to say. For a year I told them, I have nothing to say. But they insisted, and I wrote a book, and Oprah launched it, and it became a New York Times bestseller, and it was translated to Japanese and German and many, many, many languages, and it made people start questioning the 1950s way of dog training. Obviously, now that book is no longer accurate. It's 15 years ago. We have all the now new brain science and behavior understanding and vagal theories. But it's kind of like that's how it happened. Magic. Just magic. And somehow I was able to have the courage to leave my country, to learn a new language, to start a new life, and to serve in the way I'm serving this beautiful tapestry called society, called life. It's like I look life as like a tapestry. You are a thread, Aaron, I'm a thread, everybody's a thread. And we want our thread to show up in the most colorful way, not to hide, not to make it dull, the color of our thread, because we impact the whole tapestry then. So I'm blessed that I suffered enough, didn't want to be next to my biological family, and that suffering propelled me to move away and to have the courage to do what the dream guided me to do.
What do you think, what feels right for you for coming to a place of maybe ease with, if a person feels unlovable, what's the path towards coming to a relationship with that, or maybe evolving past it or releasing it, or whatever the best term is for that?
Yeah, healing. That is the biggest challenge I face in my personal life. How to know that I'm lovable, because all my life I was following. I have to do, I have to achieve, I have to become, in order to be lovable, and because that was what I was told as a child. You're not lovable. You're not lovable. You're not lovable. So I still don't know how to go about it. The answer is I still don't know. I just surround myself with people who see me truly, flaws and all, and they choose to love me despite whatever I don't like about myself. It's really funny because sometimes what we don't like about ourselves, other people find endearing. So I think having people mirror back to me that I'm lovable, and I have a good tribe of good girlfriends who really were very, very supportive of each other, of doing the work. And that is what's working for me right now. From what I hear from attachment theory, is that you find a relationship with somebody who has secure attachment, that relationship can heal. I know that it works for dog. I know that secure attachment healing works for dogs. For me, I haven't found it yet. Hopefully I will.
Have you come to a place of, or is it possible to come to a place of gratitude for whatever that initial catalyst of, the story of being unlovable and what that's...
Absolutely. For me, I do. I mean, I can see how everything was guided, that had I gotten the love and the appreciation and the safety that I so needed from my parents, I would not be doing what I was called to do. I would not be contributing in the way that I'm supposed to.
Which is interesting and almost ironic, because it's kind of like the education is let's remodel and everything, give them the love, but then they'd be a bunch of lazy bastards. So if we're kind of abusive, they might be really productive.
Yes. Isn't it
so what do we want here?
Isn't it the human experience is crazy. It's not it's a joke, it's crazy. It's insanity.
Yeah.
It's insanity. So we have moments, people, experiences where we like, and then back into the paradox.
Well, I think it's like things, things work in waves and oscillations, so maybe we don't always need to be maybe love can take many forms, and perhaps there is some grander 30,000 foot view of what's going on here, and maybe that experience of abuse or that experience of neglect or that experience of hugging and loving and appreciation or whatever, it's all a part of a soup.
Yeah.
And then we have our stories, and our labels that we attach to it, and that drives, our conscious mind.
Yeah.
But, and I think that comes into like, God. Then God perhaps is just another word produced by humans as well. But I think that 30,000 foot view, that grander plan, that ultimate chemistry that's happening. Do you think there's consciousness there?
Of course. 100%.
Interesting.
100% there's consciousness. 100% there's a higher divine intelligence. 100% we are so important and we are nothing at the same time compared to the big cosmos.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the human body, how can there not be consciousness? How can we talk with each other while our eyes keep water, our ears, our digestion, and we think and we feel and we emit? I mean, just to look at the human body, that is a miracle. It's seriously, mic drop. There's nothing after that. It's amazing, that intelligence to me.
Yeah.
Magnificent.
Well, I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. I love our conversation. We always get into so many. Thank you for having me. It's
of
such
course.
a joy.
Yeah, I was excited to catch up. Where should people go? What's the best place for people to learn more? What do you think? Where do we point humans?
I'm working now on an online course that will help dogs and will help the parents. It's going to be out hopefully in the next couple of months. The Loved Dog. So The Loved Dog on Instagram, The Loved Dog, the website, everything. I'm redoing everything now.
Great.
So
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the moments, and thank you all for tuning in. Over now. Pow.